Chapter 1131. However, the bombing did not stop, and the barrage continued. The ground shook from the powerful impact. The impact caused by the bombs made the buildings within a 100-meter radius crumble. There were no unaffected areas with the Leaker core building as the center. The ground kept sinking from the constant bombings. Griffin and the others watched the bombs pour into town at that moment. The lives of the city folks were none of their concerns. The bombings stopped after a good 10 minutes of continuous explosions. They looked over. The houses in Spiralville were almost completely destroyed. Only some buildings at the borders were left standing, but they were close to crumbling as well from the bombing. They waited for the dust to settle. Jasper said coldly, "It'll be a miracle if he could survive that. A sanctuary-level cultivator is also human. No living being could survive that," said Wesley with a smile. Salem commented, "Griffin, you worry too much." That was their first time making a large-scale bombardment in one location. They witnessed the level of bombardment they subjected the place to and were clearly doubtful about Griffin's opinion. They shook their heads and felt like it was a waste of their time. They could not believe they wasted their one favor on Wilbur. It was something they could only do once in their entire lifetime. Griffin sighed and looked at the demolished Spiralville. He said, "It looks like I was overly worried about nothing. Sorry, fellas." Suddenly, a figure slowly levitated from the ruins of the Leaker core building. The figure rose to 100 meters high before he looked at Griffin and others with a cold gaze. They could not see his face, but they could feel the cold, menacing aura. They were shocked and looked at the figure in disbelief because they could not believe their eyes. How was it possible for someone to survive that level of bombing? Meanwhile, Sophie stood in the ruins, trembling uncontrollably. She could never forget what she had just witnessed. It was etched in her soul. She saw a sea of fire, blazing flames, and earthquakes. Everything was on fire and razed to the ground. She watched the buildings around her topple and the ground crack. Even the air was burning. She could not believe that the terrifying bombing had no effect on the shield. She was standing in the shield, and she could not believe that she felt none of the impact from the apocalyptic scene that happened outside it. Wilbur's terrifying ability shook her to the core. It went beyond her ability to comprehend. She believed Wilbur must be a god for him to be able to do that. Wilbur was levitating at that moment. He looked at them and said coldly, "Come over here and die." Griffin, Salem, Wesley, and Jasper had terrible looks on their faces. They were angry yet terrified when they heard Wilbur's statement, which caused them to tremble uncontrollably. Suddenly, 3 middle-aged men behind them levitated off the ground. One of them yelled, "How audacious of you! Show us what you got, kid."